Released on March 21st, 2025, Metal Garden is a short, atmospheric, 2000s-inspired single-player FPS game where you travel through an overgrown megastructure and discover what lies beyond it. You wake up as a no-name character after crashing a mech you were piloting. From there, you learn that you are in a giant megastructure that covers the entire planet, and after years of searching, there is a rumor of an exit. From here, you set off in search of this exit to discover what lies beyond. While I haven't read the manga, Blame, though I did just reserve all the books at the library, I do get the feeling that this game takes some inspiration from these books. As you play, you slowly piece together the rest of the story, but ultimately, you could beat the game without ever looking for these extra pieces of lore. These extra story elements aren't necessary, but rather they just add a bit of extra context. As for the gameplay, it's entirely FPS with your starter weapons consisting of a knife and a pistol. As you play, you'll eventually discover a shotgun and a sniper, and you can collect grenades as well. In terms of enemies, you'll only encounter 2, though one of them does have a variant, so maybe you could consider it 2.5 enemy types. One enemy shoots you with a pistol, and the variant of this enemy has a laser or plasma weapon in the later game, though as far as I could tell there wasn't any difference in damage. The other enemy type has a giant sword or axe and does melee damage, and because that enemy is up close and personal, they're a bit more tanky and have more health. On the topic of health, I really liked the health mechanics in this game in that when your health bar depletes to 0, rather than dying, you just take damage to a body part, such as I could break my leg, and if I sprinted, I would be at risk of taking more damage, or another damaged body part could make it difficult to aim and my crosshairs would sway back and forth all wobbly. I played this on regular difficulty, and while I definitely think the gameplay was normal or regular, I wondered why I had so many health kits towards the end of the game, and it was because of this mechanic here. You want to keep from hitting 0, which is what the health packs were for, but if you did hit 0, it was not a death sentence but rather a hindrance or handicap. You could even have multiple body parts injured as well, as at one point in the game I had my head, shoulder, torso, and leg damaged, and I was required to find medic stations to heal these broken body parts. There is an easy mode and a hard mode, as well as modifiers that can change your game as well, which I really like, and I think this is an underrated feature that not enough games implement, so kudos to the dev for including something like this. In terms of the art and graphics, the first thing you'll notice is just how gray and bleak the game is. There is some color here and there, such as the grass being green, but for the most part, everything just looks depressing, but I actually like that as it gives a feeling of a futuristic dystopia. There is no sky, just a metal and concrete ceiling. There is no sun, just giant UV lamps, or so the story says anyways, as you actually can't see the lamps. My point is that the art, while depressing, really adds to the atmosphere of this game. Now I will admit, the enemy models did confuse me, as the first enemy type with the pistols and the energy guns looks like a 1776 American colonist patriot, or maybe even a Fallout New Vegas ranger, as they wear a coat and a hat, but if you look closely, their face looks like it has a helmet. The other enemy, the one that does the melee damage, looks like some sort of anthropomorphic cat, and their armor makes them look like a samurai or a terracotta warrior. While I like the designs of both of these, they just don't make sense together. The graphics look like they were ripped straight from the late stages of the PS2 lifecycle, or maybe even early PS3, which tracks because the Steam page does say that it is modeled to look like it was from the mid to late 2000s. I really like this because it almost invokes feelings of nostalgia in me. As for the time, the Steam page says 1 to 3 hours, and I completed this game in just under 2. I was running this on normal difficulty with 0 modifiers, and I did get turned around at one point, but I do think the 1 to 3 hours is accurate depending on your skill level, what difficulty you play on, and if you activate any modifiers or not. With all of that said, I give Metal Garden a rating of 7.5 sausages out of 10. The gameplay is extremely solid, but it also feels just a little empty. Empty might not be the right word. Have you ever seen one of those Michelin 5-star restaurants that bring out a plate that costs $50 and it's a tiny little strip of steak, but it tastes incredible? That might not be a completely accurate metaphor, but I think you understand what I'm saying. That's what this game feels like. Though the gameplay feels great, it just doesn't feel like there was a lot of it. I didn't mind it, of course, but if you're hoping for vehicles or a vast arsenal of weapons, you won't find it here. You shoot 3 different guns and throw grenades, but there isn't much else to do in this game mechanically. You don't drive any vehicles, unfortunately, since you do start the game off beside a broken down mech, and you don't have to worry about hunger, thirst, or a sanity meter since this isn't a survival type game. There is some minor platforming, but besides that, your only real mechanics are shooting enemies and flipping switches. The enemy variety is probably the weakest link in that there are only 2 enemy types, and one of them has a variant that shoots a different type of projectile, but even then, it doesn't really feel that different, which can feel like sort of a letdown at times. There was one boss fight at the very end which was cool, but it also just felt kinda fine. It was tanky, and it had its own attacks and movesets compared to the other 2 enemies, but after I defeated it, I didn't feel any sort of accomplishment. I just thought to myself, cool, I defeated it, what's next? My favorite part of the gameplay were the health mechanics. While I'm sure it isn't a brand new idea, I don't really see this type of mechanic implemented much. Yes, body part wounds are nothing new, but having a body part get injured rather than dying when your health drops to 0 does feel unique and less punishing, and that's what I liked about it. As for the graphics and art, if you don't like PS2 aesthetics or the gray and brown colors of this game, it might not be for you, but personally, I really liked it. The enemy models are a bit strange, as I don't know why we have Android Samuel Adams and Khajiits in the same game, but maybe I'm just nitpicking here. And lastly, the time I got out of it wasn't too bad either, as it took me just under 2 hours to complete. If you want to challenge yourself with the hardest difficulty and the different modifiers, you'll get even more time out of it too, of course. Unfortunately, I feel as if there is not much replayability to this game unless you plan to achievement hunt. There are no other weapon types to collect or use, and more importantly to me, no other endings to play through, so after my 2 hours in the game, I don't really have much reason to start up a new playthrough. So, maybe consider buying this game when it's about 25% off. And that's my review of Metal Garden. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below, but if not, just know that I appreciate your viewership nonetheless. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, and I have a Discord for both casual viewers and content creators alike, so consider following me on both of those platforms as well. I'll leave a link to everything in the description below. Anyway, I think I'm going to cut my video here. Sausage Mahoney out.